So it's been a little while since I've had an opportunity to put one of these up, and I'm always saying that I'm going to try to do this more consistently, and I end up inevitably it turns into every month or two when I do it. Maybe I should do the reverse psychology thing, or the way the ironic twist that always seemed to permeate everything in life. If I said, well, I'll do one every 6 months, or I'll do one every 3 months, I'd end up doing one a week, like that. But there's a subscriber to my channel that I started following recently, who's got quite a number of in-depth videos. In fact, enough videos that I could spawn off a few million topics on them alone. But she's the Tegan Alexandra Osmond Channel, and she's an expert in the behavior of what she often talks about as covert narcissist. And I think that really what's been eye-opening about looking at her channel is that covert narcissism is not as obvious, and it's not something that it's something that I wasn't even actually aware of in the minor little ways that they can interfere with and control your life without the obvious factors, the pop culture image of narcissism, and even now, after having read books about these people, and even having read a few case studies on them, whenever someone uses the term narcissist, I generally think of somebody like, there's an old 1943 movie by Val Lewton called Ghost Ship, and it's about a tyrannical captain is played brilliantly by actor Richard Dix, but, he's one of these people that believes he is the ultimate authority over everything. He makes decisions over everyone, and of course he's slowly but surely going insane, and it not a bad movie if you're interested in an old classic movie like that, or kind of like can't think of the captain's name in the Caine Mutiny, the one who goes completely insane in another old movie. But I generally tend to think of narcissists in those types of terms. I think of them as someone who's very, very, very in love with themselves and struck on themselves, but at the same time, whenever I hear that term, it's just the pop culture image jumps in my head of some, nutcase leader of some corporation or some office boss. You see him like in comedies or something like that everybody lives in terror of, and, is always trying to get around like some monolithic force that's just making misery in everybody's lives. But one thing I've been noticing since I started following her channel, it has a lot to do with certain tactics and certain underhanded moves that these covert narcissists can make that interfere with people's lives. In fact, she had one not too long ago about a certain dynamic that goes on with narcissistic parents, and I won't go into a lot of detail about my own personal background, and I promise I will tie this into AA in a moment, but she was talking about certain types of narcissistic parents who want to keep their kids in complete dependency, and not really a dependency more or less, but they want to keep them in the childlike state. Like I said, I don't want to go too far into my own family history, but I had a family member that had pretty much an iron type of control over her kids, even after they were grown, even after they were long overdue to have moved out and gone on with their lives or whatever. And there was a subtle game that this person would play in people's lives. Like they would maybe give you like if you were down on your luck and you were broke and you needed help or something like that, they'd come in and they'd bail you out, no problem. But then they would hold that over you, and they would beat you with that for the rest of your life. They would, anytime that you dared to be ungrateful, or anytime that you dared to question their almighty tyrannical power, they would come back at you with, well, remember that one time I helped you out with this. But to give you the best example of one of the power games that they would play, like, I'll just use an example from an actual family member, one of this person's children. She said she'll actually feed you all the time and insist you eat food all the time to the point you're almost overweight, and then she'll chastise you for being fat and ugly. It was kind of like that kind of power dynamic and everything. But where this ties into the topic on this video is I was thinking about one silly thing I used to hear a lot in AA meetings, and it's generally used when they love bombing newcomers a lot, is when they would say something to you like, we'll love you until you can learn to love yourself, which is a pile of shit, because, there is no real love in the AA rooms whatsoever. It's all phony. It's all hypocritical. It's all about crushing your own determination and your own self-will. Self-will is treated as a derogatory term, as though being independent and as though being relying on your own mental faculties or whatever is an inherently bad thing, because look at your alcoholic history. How could you possibly ever hope to have any kind of independence whatsoever? And it hit me when I was watching Tegan Alexandra's video about narcissistic parents. There was a quote I remembered reading somewhere, and I had to dig out a few old Nietzsche books to find it, but it does say something like the worst kind of behavior or the worst kind of repayment a student can give to a teacher is to always remain a student. And what I'm driving at on that is that it kind of occurred to me that if you were truly going to put that nonsensical slogan into practice, I will love you until you learn to love yourself, like they say to people, then if you were going to give somebody the tools to learn to love themselves, you would be wanting to give them the actual tools of independence. You would be wanting to give them the tool of being able to learn to cultivate their own self-love. You would be telling them things like, take pride in your accomplishments. Take pride in the good things that you see the good things about yourself that you like. Write down things about yourself you even like, no matter how hokey or silly that sounded. Let's just say you were in a position like so many people are when they're hopelessly dependent on drugs or alcohol or whatever, and they're completely crushed internally, emotionally, and they're a wreck because of what their addiction has done to them. Then the only way to rebuild back up a situation where they would be able to learn to love themselves, would be able to give them confidence in themselves, would be able to give them self-respect, would be able to teach them boundaries, would be able to teach them all the essential tools necessary to achieve what I would call independence. It wouldn't be the opposite that AA uses. AA is kind of like the narcissistic parent dynamic. They want you eternally dependent upon them. How can you ever learn to love yourself, or how can you ever learn to be satisfied with yourself, or how can you ever learn to have satisfaction in your own daily life if you're constantly being told and constantly being programmed to realize that you're hopelessly sick and you're hopelessly immature and you're hopelessly an emotional wreck and you're all these things, and you can never achieve any kind of independence of your own. You can never be any more than the little kid that's afraid to learn how to walk because he's got to hold on to his mother's finger. You know, you've seen parents when they're teaching a kid how to walk, the kid, he's clinging onto that finger like it's got all the support in the world, like it's a matter of life and death. If he lets go of that finger, he's going to fall. Now, really, the finger is just an illusion. All he's got to do is turn loose and take a step. He just doesn't know that as of yet as he's learning. You kind of have to give him the confidence to say, hey, I'm going to take the finger up and you're going to walk. It's the same kind of thing with a narcissistic parent dynamic as an AA narcissistic parent dynamic. Even their idea of a higher power, to me, is almost like the narcissistic parent dynamic, because your version of a higher power you get in AA is a version where you're never confident enough to do anything on your own. You're never confident to make a move on anything on your own. You're not even confident enough to even make mistakes without completely denigrating yourself and saying, oh, the only reason I made that silly mistake was because I'm a sick fucking alcoholic and I'm all twisted. And every little minor thing that, every little flaw, every little inconsistency that exists in every single human being on this planet is blown up all out of proportion, and you're made to feel like that somehow or the other these little mistakes you're making wouldn't be made by 99% of the population. It's just done by you because you are a sick alcoholic who needs to be constantly dependent upon us in order to even hope to have any kind of functionality in your life, just as long as you put the cult first. You know, if you fall in love with someone, it's probably going to lead you to relapse. If you have a fun fling with someone, it's because you're a sick alcoholic full of all these perverse emotions. You can't have two consenting adults just saying that they want to have a good fun time together on a date or something like that. It's got to be because you have all these sick, evil, insidious desires about you. You can't laugh with somebody without them examining your fucking sense of humor or whatever. I remember a guy that was talking in a meeting one time about he saw a situation on television and he laughed about it. Nobody else thought it was funny, and he realized that that proved to him that he was not like other people, that he was demented, that he was twisted. And I was, even at the time, even as a cult member, I was thinking, there's nothing fucking wrong with you, okay? It's not some great crime to laugh at a scene that's not intended to be funny. I remember, like, when I was watching the movie Apocalypse Now, there's the scene where the general is talking about every man has a breaking point. You and I have them. Walt Kurtz has reached his. And very obviously, he has gone insane. Okay, that's a very serious scene, but I was dying laughing when that happened. I mean, he was looking like, you know, this is a terrible situation we got to send you on here, Captain. You're going to have to kill this guy, but it's obvious you have to do this because he's gone insane. You know, there's nothing wrong with taking a little laugh or being a little silly or making a little mistake or doing all those things that makes us normal human beings, but AA keeps you in a sick-dependent relationship. It's almost like, I believe what someone called it one time in a psychological book I was reading, it's called negative bonding. It's kind of like when you see a married couple that are constantly bickering and constantly at each other's throats. There's no healthy dialogue, there's no healthy conversation, there's no healthy building at all in this relationship, but they seem inextricably bound together because the negative bond is what ties them. It's almost like the negativity, the really toxic atmosphere of AA altogether is the tie that binds you together, and you can't really learn to love someone. You can't really love someone until you learn to love yourself. If you're stuck in an environment like that, how are you ever gonna learn to love yourself if you're constantly denigrating yourself? If you're constantly living in a state of terror and fear about every decision and every thought that goes through your mind. So they're saying, like anything else, like on the surface, when you hear somebody say, you know, we'll love you until you learn to love yourself. I mean, there's a part of me that would always inwardly groan because I knew that was nothing but bullshit. But there was another part of me that never could quite identify or articulate why I found that statement to be so inherently sickening. And I think because I was watching Tegan Alexandra, that she kind of helped me arrive at the conclusion that I was kind of reaching for there. It's a sick dynamic. It's a sick power structure. It's not even remotely healthy, and you can't be in a very, very toxic and unhealthy situation and expect to achieve any kind of positivity in your life whatsoever. It's no wonder that I never stopped drinking when I was in AA. I mean, you can't live like that and hope to ever achieve anything even remotely close to what they call serenity. And it's no mystery to me now why, after leaving AA, I haven't had any problems quitting my addictive behaviors, because I'm not constantly enmeshed in all of the toxic family drama that I had going on with me, and I'm not constantly enmeshed in the sick atmosphere of the cult meetings. And anyway, I think I've talked too long. I've said way more than I intended to. But yeah, if you see Tegan Alexandra Osmond, I mix things up on stuff like that. Definitely check her channel out. I'll put a link in the description of the video. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the subtle little mind games of covert narcissists, I would head over there and check it out. Until next time, hopefully.